What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Max Chadwick here with you once again to recap another day of on-field testing drills in Indianapolis at the 2026 Scouting Combine. Today, we're recapping quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs that we got to see out there do a lot of the drills, a lot of the athletic testing, and to be honest with you, Max, there were a lot of guys that stood out in big ways. I don't know if whoever's running the timer for the 40-yard dash is just a little bit quicker than they're supposed to be, but I don't care. It's given us some great things to talk about with some great athletes at some premium skill positions. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Trev. You know, with all due respect to the big uglies going today in the offensive linemen, it feels like this past day in the NFL Combine was like the main event. It always feels like the running backs, the wide receivers, even the quarterbacks out there in their throwing sessions. It feels like yesterday was kind of the main event of the Combine.
It kind of did, and I was interested because they change the schedule, right? They'll change the schedule all the time. It used to be that I think offensive linemen were first. I think O-linemen used to be first, and then it was quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends. Then they would go to defensive line and linebackers, and then they would end the combine with defensive backs. And so they switched it up a little bit. Obviously, we've got the offensive linemen hitting the field today, which is on Sunday when we're recording this show. But it did kind of feel like most of the hype came around. Maybe it was just a Saturday thing. You know, maybe it was just like, everybody had off of work. Everybody was watching the combine. They were getting caught up. But I do agree with you. It felt like yesterday was the longest day. Not that it was, like painfully long or anything, but it felt like there was the most that we learned and got to watch and get excited about and all of that because of all of those positions. I'm sure fantasy football goes into that as well. But I agree. Yesterday was a lot of fun.
It sure helps, Trev, when you have a guy at every single position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, that had like all-time combines as well. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about in this show today.
You want to talk about the guy that you want to bring to the table first, Taylor Green from Arkansas? I mean, he was it was hilarious to watch him out there and the athleticism. We already knew he was a great athlete, right? He's had an elite rushing grade this past season. I'm not sure if it was the year before as well, but we knew what this dude could do as an athlete, but it's still fun to see that on-field athleticism come to life in the athletic testing at the combine.
Yeah, it's preposterous. It was really one of the best combines we've ever seen for a quarterback, up there with the likes of like Anthony Richardson, what we saw a couple years ago as well. 6'6", 96th percentile, you see right there. 227 pounds, 72nd percentile. A 43.5-inch vertical for Taylor Green. That is 3 inches higher than the all-time quarterback record set by Anthony Richardson. How about an 11-foot, 2-inch broad jump? That's 5 inches farther than the all-time quarterback record, again, set by Anthony Richardson. A 4.36 as well on the 40-yard dash. Trevor, that is the second fastest ever seen by a quarterback. The only one faster? Michael Vick, of course. So yeah. Taylor Green, and not to mention one of the strongest arms in this class as well. He is coming off back-to-back 80-plus grades at Arkansas. There is a little bit of a debate right now on social media whether or not he's a quarterback at the next level, whether or not he's a wide receiver or maybe a tight end at the next level. And I understand the concerns, right? Because he had 11 big-time throws and 22 turnover-worthy plays this past year. So literally double the amount of turnover-worthy plays as big-time throws this past year. So there are questions about how he'll transit to the league as a passer, but there are no questions as an athlete and as a runner right now, which makes me think that maybe a position change to wide receiver or tight end could be in his future. He is well worth a draft pick because even if he doesn't work out at quarterback, you could always move him to receiver or tight end as well. Maybe it could be a pretty good player for you there, like maybe a Terrell Pryor, what he did going into the league too. So I was really impressed by Taylor Green yesterday, and like I said, it was an all-time performance by him at quarterback.
Yeah, when you look at his athletics testing, his 40-yard dash, now this is, of course, against quarterbacks. 40-yard dash, 100th percentile. 10-yard split, 96th percentile. Vertical jump, 100th percentile. Broad jump, 100th percentile. So it's funny. Normally, whenever that's the case, when you're a massive outlier, especially in an athletic position that's not always as athletic as others, you talk about, well, are you playing the wrong position? It's always a little tricky when it comes to quarterback. Ultimately, I do think that Taylor Green's going to stick around in the league, but I do think it's going to be at one of those skill positions. I've said for a while, like, I feel like it should be tight end.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm looking at him on the field. He's got such a slender build, Max. Like, I don't really even think that you could throw 30 pounds on him and he'll be as athletic as you want him to be. You'll have to have him block a little bit if he's a tight end. So I feel like wide receiver is probably the more likely path for him. I haven't really said wide receiver for him to this point. I've consistently said tight end, but just looking at his body type, and to be honest with you, seeing how athletic he is, right? It's not just he's athletic, he's incredibly athletic. I think you could teach him to play a wide receiver, and I think that that's probably where he will have the biggest impact in the league. I wonder if he'll get a shot at quarterback. As a day 3 type of a player, I don't think he's getting drafted in the top 100, but I think as a day 3 player, maybe some team will draft him, give him a chance as a quarterback, especially one that's in an offense that allows you to maximize your legs the way that we've seen Arkansas do over the last couple of years, specifically this past season with him having that elite rushing grade. But ultimately, I do feel as though his long-term position is going to be at wide receiver in the NFL if he is going to stick around after his first contract. Another quarterback that I want to bring up is Ty Simpson. I did want to talk about Ty Simpson because we don't have any athletic testing numbers for Simpson. He didn't work out in that regard there, but he did show up and he did go through the on-field throwing portion of the combine. And I thought he was one of the best guys out there, maybe the best guy out there, the most consistent player. I love the fundamentals. I felt like the fundamentals from him was really clean. I thought his lower body mechanics were great. No wasted steps, no hops here and there, always pointed to the target. It just looked like a very clean day for him. And I think that that's when you saw some really good accuracy for those out route throws. A couple of the deep throws as well were picture perfect, hitting those guys in stride exactly where they needed to go. And so I won't say that it was, quite the workout that we saw from CJ Stroud a couple of years ago, which the broadcast was talking about, but I did really like what I saw from Simpson. And throwing at the combine is one of those things where if you don't throw, I don't really care. I won't, knock you for it, but there is something to, much like we talk about this with the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, there's something to showing up to an unfamiliar environment with unfamiliar wide receivers and timing and still looking really good, still being able to showcase ball placement and accuracy. And obviously, for Simpson to be able to do that in that new environment, it's just one of those things you go, I'm impressed here. Now, does it mean more than the tape at Alabama? Of course it doesn't. But again, it's nice to see when guys just get plopped in an unfamiliar environment, that natural ability is all that can stand out because you don't have repetition, you don't have practice, you don't have the chemistry with those wide receivers. And for him to look the way that he did, I was impressed. And I think that other NFL teams are going to be impressed as well. So if he looked really shaky and inconsistent yesterday, I probably would have come on here and said, I really think that he's going to be that day 2 type of a pick. But for as comfortable as he looked in a new environment, I think there's teams that are going to be able to point to him, especially what he was in the first half of the season for Alabama before he got hurt and beat up. They're going to be able to just look at the positives. They're going to look at it through rose-colored glasses, glass half full, optimistic, however you want to say it. And I think his stock is back into that mid to late first round range for Ty Simpson.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love how you put it right there where, when you're throwing at the combine, and like you said, you have all these new receivers you never even played with before. You don't have a week of practice like even at the Senior Bowl where you're used to, throwing to them. It's hard to be on time and accurate with them all the time. And really, it felt like Ty Simpson was that in the throwing session. So I was also really impressed by him too. And like you said, if he had a bad throwing session, we could have been saying, okay, there's only one first-round quarterback this year, Fernando Mendoza. I do believe there's 2 now. I do believe that Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson, and I thought Ty Simpson was a first-round pick before this, but I do think he solidified himself in that throwing session yesterday. The measurables weren't the best for Ty Simpson, checking in just over a hair over 6'1" and 211 pounds. Both of those are below 15th percentile or lower for quarterbacks. Also, only 32nd percentile hand size, just over 9 inches too. So measurables not the best for Ty Simpson, but you mentioned before, I thought he was by far the cleanest passer in the throwing session yesterday.
I think the other quarterback that a lot of people will be talking about is Drew Allar, and I think for this week leading up to the throwing session, I understand that people don't cover the NFL draft year-round a lot like we do, both on the NFL show and on you guys' college football show as well. But I think there are a lot of people that are sort of getting to Drew Allar's tape, and man, talk about some people that are watching him through rose-colored glasses. I mean, if you kind of just watch the reps, like the play-by-play reps, there are really good things to like about what Drew Allar brings to the table. He's got a big arm. He's got big size. He's got some added mobility to him. He was 91st percentile in height, 73rd percentile in weight, 76th percentile in arm length, then 100th percentile when it came to his wingspan as a quarterback. Now, I am surprised that his hands were as small as they were, just 19th percentile there for Drew Aller. But I feel like over the last week, I've seen a lot of people say, man, if there's any quarterback I'd take a chance on after Fernando Mendoza, it's Drew Aller. And to be honest with you, Max, I felt that way going into the year. I felt that way over summer, coming off of a really nice junior season that he had that third year at Penn State. But after this past season, there's too much on his resume where he just did not perform well, either consistently or in big games, for me to say that sentence of, hey, yeah, I'd take him over any other quarterback in this class. The games do have to matter. How you play against big opponents and at a consistent level, not just throughout a season and not just throughout a game, but also throughout your entire college football career, has to matter. And this is still a young quarterback. He can still get better. We're seeing it in the NFL, right? Sam Darnold's the ultimate example right now of, hey, you give a guy who's got all the talent some time and he can figure it out in his mid to late 20s. That's well within the cards there. But I feel like I've seen people on the timeline talk about Drew Aller as if the negatives from him and the inconsistencies don't matter. And I think that they absolutely do. And that's why I still view him as a day three type of a quarterback. I still view him much more as a flyer quarterback than somebody that you draft and then, hey, maybe he's in a quarterback competition right away for that top job in most situations that might need a new starting quarterback in 2026. So I just see a lot of people talking about Drew Aller through those rose-colored glasses and a little bit too glass half full for me, given the full college career that I saw from him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think QB2 is even in the conversation for Drew Aller right now. I think, as a Penn State fan, I can even tell you that it's been frustrating to watch his career develop. And there's been so many highs, and he does a good job of keeping care of the football and taking care of it. And, it has a very low turnover-worthy play rate. But his accuracy, Trev, and his mechanics have been an absolute disaster ever since he got to Penn State, honestly. I think his footwork has been a mess at Penn State, which leads to a lot of accuracy issues. And even from a clean pocket, you see that. So I think his mechanics from the ground up need to be completely reworked right now. He is a project right now, and that's a guy that I would probably take somewhere in the fourth round. Maybe I think somewhere like QB4 you could argue for him right now. I do think the top three of Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, and probably Garrett Nussmeier, Kay Klubnik, you could argue above Drew Aller right now, so maybe QB4, QB5. But I do think there's something there with Drew Aller, and I will say too, there are a lot of excuses for Drew Aller, right? I think he was a square peg trying to fit in a round hole at Penn State's offense. It's an offense that really didn't push the ball downfield at all. So actually watching him throw deep balls yesterday at the Combine was probably more deep balls than you ever saw in Drew Aller's career at Penn State, just because of how they didn't really throw the ball downfield at all. So I don't think he's a good fit in Penn State's offense. And also, Trev, I can tell you right now, Penn State's receiving core over the last few years has been nothing short of a disaster. They have done a horrible job at recruiting at wide receiver. That's been the Achilles heel of this team. So there are excuses for Drew Aller. But you look at his mechanics, and I still think he's a big project right now. I think there is maybe down the line a guy who can maybe start some games for you in the NFL, but that is a couple years or 3 years down the line, in my opinion. That's not a guy that I would take on day 2 of the NFL draft.
Yeah, I think with Aller, you'll hear people talk about, well, he's got the potential to start in the NFL. And I would agree with that. I wouldn't push back on you there. He's got the physical tools to be able to start at the NFL level. But I don't think it's something where, hey, let's draft him in the top 60, top 50, allow him to kind of come in for a quarterback competition this upcoming season. I think he's much more of somebody that you got to get in his system. He's got to wait a little bit. And then maybe you'll give a chance to him when he hopefully fixes those lower body mechanics, as well as gets with some better receivers, kind of like you mentioned. The running back position. Let's move on to running back, because I know that there's somebody that you wanted to shout out. There's a handful of guys to shout out for both good and bad reasons, honestly. And I think that both running back and wide receiver, we're going to talk about the good, but we're also going to talk about some guys that were a little bit disappointing here. So who's the first guy that you want to talk about from the running back spot?
Dude, how about the Arkansas Razorbacks and what they did at the Combine yesterday? Because Mike Washington Jr., man, what a performance for him. Taylon Green had an all-time performance at quarterback. Mike Washington Jr., all-time performance at running back. Actually, Trevor, right now, Kentley Platt's relative athletic score, he's the only perfect 10 in the 2026 Combine.
Wow.
As of right now, too. So one of the all-time performances at running back that we've ever seen. 6'1", 223 pounds, which is 77th percentile. Ran a 4.33 in the 40-yard dash. Big congratulations to anyone who bet on Mike Washington. Trev, I actually think one sportsbook had him at plus 1,500 to be the fastest running back in the draft. So people were making some good money on Mike Washington yesterday, running a 4.33, 98th percentile, fastest in the draft for running backs, 10'8" broad jump, 93rd percentile, 39-inch vertical, 91st percentile as well. So incredible job by Mike Washington. This is a guy where the athleticism pops off on tape as well. He had 22 miles per hour in our tracking this past year, 7 different plays where he hit 20 miles an hour at Arkansas. There are some concerns still, I think, with his vision and his ball security, but he did become much more of a receiving threat this past year than he was at Buffalo or New Mexico State. But he really, Trev, I think he could be one of the first 5 running backs taken in this upcoming NFL draft, and he could be an early 4th-round pick, maybe even a late 3rd-round pick after that performance.
Yeah, I mean, he was a standout for sure. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And I think that as we've started to get to more running backs really since November, as we're kind of building out our big boards and everything, Mike Washington has been a name that has come up, and he was somebody who went through the All-Star Bowl circuit as well. And it's just those flashes from him get you really excited. I agree. I don't think that he sees the field as consistently as you would like for him to, but he also had moments on his tape where even if he didn't see it exactly correctly, he had the athleticism to make up for it, whether it was bouncing it to the outside or, being a little bit late, but being able to put his foot in the ground and really explode through the running hole wherever it was. If somebody's kind of there already and he's getting his arms on him, if it's not a shoulder tackle, if it's an arm tackle, he's shrugging off of those things because he is that big and he is that powerful. And as we saw yesterday, he confirmed that he is that explosive as well. So the NFL is always going to take a chance on those bigger athletes. And I think that his stock is sort of fringe top 100. I think that it's right around that top 100 area. I could see him being a 3rd-round pick, depending on how people view, like you mentioned, his 3rd-down ability, his receiving ability, his pass-protecting ability. But it was cool to see him have the day that he had, and then being emotional on the sideline too. Anybody who watched the broadcast saw that. He was kind of hands in his face, and he was getting a little emotional in a good way, calling his family. I'm sure everybody in his life texting him, telling him how proud they are of him and how he worked to get to that point, to have that opportunity to be on that stage and then prove it to the world. It's just a really cool feeling, right? Anybody who's ever been out there and they've had a really big opportunity in their life, and any time that they could walk away and be like, man, I put my best foot forward. It is a really great feeling. And I think that you saw the emotions kind of, boil up in a great way for Washington when he was on the sideline after having an incredible performance there. So shout out to him. Really helped out his stock and stand out in a down running back class, right? I mean, this running back class is Jeremiah Love, and then who knows, right? I like Jonah Coleman a lot from Washington, but Jonah Coleman, he didn't do anything. And I think that's concerning because that's the big, question mark with him is overall athleticism, and he didn't test at all. So, he'll test at the pro day. We'll see what he runs at the pro day, but a lot of times, sometimes you get those home cooking on the stopwatch at the pro day, so maybe it's a little bit better than what it would have been in Indianapolis. But so, this running back room, I think or this running back class, I should say, is totally up in the air. But let's shout out Jeremiah Love, because the 4.36 40-yard dash, especially when you look at a player who measured in with 74th percentile height, 40th percentile weight. I mean, over 210 pounds. He's got long arms to him, long wingspan. Had the really good 10-yard split as well, getting off the line of scrimmage, which I feel like is one of his calling card traits of being able to just put his foot in the ground and go up the field. It was the day that Jeremiah Love needed, and he only ran the 40-yard dash, but to be honest with you, Max, that's all he needed to do.
Yep.
What's the straight line speed? Let's see the straight line speed. The rest of it, you let the tape do the talking. So Jeremiah Love, in my opinion, as advertised, checked all the boxes. We thought of him as a blue chip prospect, RB1, a top 10 overall guy in this class, and what we saw at the Combine, even though it was somewhat limited in its exposure, to me, solidified him being exactly that.
Trev, he didn't need to run the 40 at all, honestly. He could have flipped us off and said, I'm not doing anything. We'll just watch the tape, man, honestly. But he's a guy that I was really happy with the 40-yard dash for him, too, running a 4.36. I actually tweeted out yesterday, my comp for him right now is Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs ran the same exact 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine as well. So I love the day for Jeremiah Love as well. Look, again, he had no reason to do anything besides measure in at the Combine and do interviews with teams and interviews with the media. That's all he had to do, honestly, because he is by far RB1 in this class, maybe even the best player in this draft class, maybe even a top 3 pick in this draft class too. So he had nothing to gain from the NFL Combine and everything to lose, but you still love the competitive spirit from Jeremiah Love, still going out there when so many other running backs declined to participate in the Combine. Jeremiah Love, the number one guy by a mile, said, nah, screw it. I'm going out there. I'm running the 40-yard dash. I'm showing why I'm one of the fastest players in college football and now going into the NFL right now. So love the competitiveness from Jeremiah Love right there. Just to answer a quick question in the chat that we got. Someone asked, I didn't see Nick Singleton out at the Combine. He actually broke his foot at the Senior Bowl, actually right in front of me at the Senior Bowl on the sideline. So he was actually at the Combine. I'm sure he interviewed with teams at the Combine, but he couldn't participate because he actually broke his foot about a month ago at the Senior Bowl.
Which is a bummer because all we've heard for the last 3 years is how crazy of an athlete Nick Singleton is. And when he gets some daylight and he sees it correctly on the field, man, he could absolutely go. And you see that from him. He had one of the highest in-game athleticism scores of any running back in college football over the last couple of seasons. Ton of runs where he had over 20 miles an hour. So really disappointing that we didn't get to see him. And unfortunately disappointing for him as well because that was going to be an area where, okay, you know, the tape's been a little bit underwhelming over the last couple of years for Singleton, but he was going to remind people, hey, this is why you think of me as a running back that you could draft in the top 100. And so it's a bummer for him, but of course, I think the tape speaks for itself there in that regard. You can see that athleticism there. I want to shout out my guy, Seth McGowan, who I feel like is an underrated running back in this class. Got a crazy story of how he ended up at Kentucky, started at Oklahoma, ended up getting arrested, served 3 months in jail for his part in armed robbery, and it took him so many years to get back to football. I mean, this is a guy who truly hit rock bottom. I mean, this is someone who had football completely taken away from him. He wasn't even at the D1 level when he came back. I believe he started at the NAIA level, and then I think it was maybe D2, D3 after that. Eventually made the jump up and got back to Kentucky. And from the folks that I know at Kentucky, I've only heard fantastic things about who he is now as a person, how he has matured, the man he is now, and obviously that's great on and off the field reasons. But man, I felt like he really showed out. He weighed in as one of the bigger backs at the Combine. Let me make sure that I got his measurables right here. 74th percentile in height, 70th percentile in weight. So checking the boxes above the 70th percentile in overall size there. But then when you go to the athletic ability, 68th percentile in the 40-yard dash, and then 100th percentile in the vert, 99th percentile in the broad. He had the highest vertical jump of any running back in this class at 42 and a half. And then his 10-foot, 11-inch broad was also best in the class. So he was best in the class at both of those explosiveness drills. And I think that you see that on tape. And for him to be over 220 pounds and be able to showcase that kind of explosiveness, man, I think that it's there for him. You see why he was a four-star recruit when it was eventually coming out of high school and going to Oklahoma. You see why Kentucky wanted to lean on him as much as possible this past season. I think that athletic ability is there. Obviously, the interviews are huge for him and answering those questions of his past for NFL teams. But again, from what I have heard, it sounds like he is a completely different person, a changed person, and a better person because of what's been in his past. And so the NFL ability is definitely there on his tape. And if he is checking those boxes in the interview rooms as well, we could see a back that teams take probably in the mid rounds, to be honest with you, maybe late third, but maybe early fourth round as well, but gets a chance to be part of a rotation and maybe be part of a two-back committee in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I said, it was a winding road for Seth McGowan going to Oklahoma, then Texas College, then Butler Community College, then New Mexico State, and then finally at Kentucky this past year. And he had a really good year at Kentucky, I thought, this past year too. So it was good to see him do that. And I thought the jumps for him yesterday were really, really good to see right there at 42.5-inch vertical. That's the 5th best ever for a running back. 131-inch broad jump as well, 99th percentile for running backs too. So yeah, I was a big fan of what Seth McGowan did this past year at Kentucky, kind of breaking out this past year with the Wildcats. And now, I mean, like you said, in a wide open running back class right now, Seth McGowan definitely made some money yesterday.
I think there's one more running back that you had a little bit later in our sheet. I'm looking at our sheet right now, but I think we should just hit running backs now, and that's Emmett Johnson, who we wanted to talk about here. Is a little bit of a stock down type of a player, because the one big concern that we had with Emmett Johnson, who's got some fast footwork, can really make you miss in a phone booth. He's got great quickness to him, but what's the long speed for Emmett Johnson? And unfortunately, I think he had the slowest 40-yard dash of any running back that ran yesterday, which does not help him answer the questions of what he could be once he gets into open space.
Yeah, I thought it was just a relatively disappointing combine. Not an all-time bad one by any means, but it was just a relatively disappointing one. He still tested out as kind of an above-average athlete overall, but you see the size, 5'10", 202 pounds. His weight is only 17th percentile for running backs. And then really, Trevor, the 40-yard dash wasn't great, right? A 4.56, which is 46th percentile for running backs. But what I was kind of more concerned with was when I watched tape for Emmett Johnson, the most impressive part to me was his agility. In the agility drills, didn't really look all that great. Ran a 7.32 in the 3 cones, 9th percentile, 4.29 in the short shuttle. That is a 41st percentile. His jumps were average as well. So I knew the long speed wasn't great for him, so that's why the 4.56 wasn't really that bad, I don't think, for him in the 40. But it was the agility drills in the 3 cone and the short shuttle that was a little more surprising to me, honestly. So this is a guy that entered the combine week as maybe a 3rd round pick in the draft, probably a top 3 running back in the draft. Trevor, I think he could fall to the 4th round now and fall to day 3 of the NFL draft. So again, not a horrendous performance by Emmett Johnson overall, but I just wasn't really that impressed. And for a guy who could have made some money with Jonah Coleman not participating, Nick Singleton mentioned before, not participating, Emmett Johnson could have made a real case to be RB2 in this draft with a pretty good combine. And I thought it was just an okay combine from him, and for some of his numbers, a little bit disappointing too.
Yeah, I think he's firmly in the day 3 conversation now. I mean, I don't think there's any world where he is getting drafted into the top 100 just because he's smaller and he didn't test nearly as well athletically as people wanted or honestly probably needed him to test when it came to being a top 100 pick. Some people are shouting out Jadarian Price as well. And Max, if you got any other quick hitters on the running backs, we'll hit that before we turn the page over to wide receivers. But Jadarian Price, I thought it was fine. It was a fine day for him. 46th percentile in height, 18th percentile in weight. I thought he'd be a lot bigger, but he actually only showed up at 203. Bigger hands, 68th percentile 40-yard dash to 4.49, 37th percentile in 10-yard split. Explosive numbers were fine, 53rd percentile in the vertical jump, 79th percentile in the broad. So I thought it was fine. I thought the day was fine for Jadarian Price, who could very well be that second running back off of the board for the tape that he put out there this past season. I think it's between, like him, Jonah Coleman, are I think the guys that are there, the 1-2, maybe Mike Washington probably puts himself into that conversation there as well. Maybe Seth McGowan does too. But I feel like if there's a surprise, it would probably be Washington. But anybody else at running back stand out to you at all whatsoever?
Yeah, I thought it was a little disappointing for Jadarian Price too. I think it's right now consensus RB2 in the draft, and his big calling card is how athletic he is, and like you said, it was an okay day for him overall in the combine. So again, don't count it too many times because I think he is still a pretty good athlete overall, but not a great combine for him. But other than that, yeah, I think it was a pretty decent. Like I said, there's not a lot of running backs that actually tested. It was disappointing not to see Jonah Coleman at all yesterday. I mentioned before, really disappointing that we could not see Nick Singleton with a broken foot, because I think he could have really shined at the combine and made himself a lot of money at the combine, considering how good he is of an athlete, as his size and speed combination. But yeah, other than that, there weren't really too many other running backs I thought really stood out in the drills yesterday. I thought Adam Randall, actually, from Clemson, he actually surprised me more so. I thought he was a guy that wasn't that athletic of a running back, but he actually tested out a lot better than I expected him to. So that's one guy right there. But other than that, like I said, there's a lot of running backs actually sat out of this combine, so not a lot of guys to really talk about today.
We'll move on to wide receivers. A lot of wide receivers that we are talking about here. But before we do that, every week on Draft Risers, we're highlighting players climbing draft boards as teams get deeper into the evaluation process. Of course, that includes here at the Combine. These guys are rising because decision makers are getting more confident about the full profile, not just chasing certain traits. And our guy that we're highlighting all week is Sonny Styles. He is our draft riser for this week, and how could he not be, given the numbers that you guys are seeing on the screen there? First in 40-yard dash, first in vertical jump, first in broad jump, sixth in 3-cone drill, fifth in short shuttle, all for the linebacker position. He was unbelievable this week, and I think that you see that explosiveness show up on his film as well. So anytime that you get to check those boxes emphatically the way that he did this week, you're going to be a draft riser, even for a player who we already thought very highly of. When you are trying to identify risers like that, it's not about guessing. It's about having better tools, better data, and a better process. That same approach applies to when you are making decisions about your own money as well. If you want to make smarter picks with your portfolio, Tasty Trade gives you the advanced tools and data to do so. You can trade stocks, options, futures, and more all in one platform. Tasty Trade offers low commissions, including a $10 cap per leg on option trades, so you can keep more of what you earn. The platform includes back testing and risk analysis tools to help you plan ahead and manage risk. It offers dozens of educational courses as well that you can access free with your account. And you can get live support from Tasty Trade's experienced trade desk reps during trading hours. Visit tastytrade.com/PFF today. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. Max, really, we got a lot of wide receivers that we're talking about here today. As is often the case, fantasy football, scoring points, fan favorites, it's often centered around wide receiver. So who's the first guy that you want to talk about at the receiver spot?
Yeah, let's stay in the Cincinnati area right now, Trev, with Jeff Caldwell, who I thought had a great performance yesterday. Just an absolute freak, and pretty cool. Trev, when we were at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, it was another Cincy wide receiver in Cyrus Allen that stood out. Jeff Caldwell was the biggest standout, I thought, at wide receiver at the Combine. 6'5", 96th percentile, 216 pounds, 83rd percentile, and even though he's a massive wide receiver, still ran a 4.31 in the 40-yard dash. That is 96th percentile for all wide receivers and probably 120th percentile for a 6'5" wide receiver. Had a 42-inch vertical, 97th percentile, 11-foot 2-inch broad jump, 97th percentile as well. Not the best year for him overall this year at Cincinnati, with the 71.5 receiving grade, transferred in actually from Lindenwood before FCS school, 478 yards and 6 touchdowns. He entered this week, Trev, as kind of like a borderline draftable prospect. He is 1,000% getting drafted after this type of Combine performance. And actually, Trev, shout out to a PFF alum and Brad Spielberger, because Jeff Caldwell, his agency is the same one that Brad Spielberger works at as well. So I saw he was very much celebrating this on Twitter, and deservingly so, because Jeff Caldwell, I thought, was the best athlete of any wide receiver at the Combine this year.
Anybody who's followed PFF back when Brad was here knows that Brad knows ball. So this is not a shock to me at all that they were able to find a player who is this athletic. So for Jeff Caldwell, man, all the ability in the world. Just get on the jugs machine.
Yeah.
Just a billion, because there are just too many times where I feel like he just doesn't have either the concentration or the contested catch opportunities go his way as much as they need to. So we get the hands right, man, we've got a great potential vertical wide receiver on our hands. I'm going to shout out Omar Cooper Jr., who I thought had a really well-rounded Combine performance. Height was 36th percentile, weight was 34th percentile. We knew that he wasn't going to be a giant wide receiver, but checking the boxes there. The arm length's a little bit shorter for him. The wingspan's a little bit shorter for him, but the hand size, 67th percentile. You love to see those bigger hands for wide receivers. 77th percentile in 40-yard dash for Omar Cooper Jr., a 4.42, and then a 67th percentile 10-yard split. Also had a 37-inch vertical jump, which was 64th percentile. Omar Cooper Jr. essentially was checking the boxes and answering the questions that we wanted him to answer, and that is, hey, how athletic are you, right? We see you as this all-around athlete type of guy who could play on the outside as a Z receiver off the line of scrimmage, because a lot of times Elijah Surratt played on the line of scrimmage. They'd play Omar Cooper Jr. in the slot as well. Really nice when it came to contested catch opportunities, but not the best when it came to overall separation. But it's just, it was kind of the questions of like, hey, are you just not super athletic, or are you athletic and we just kind of need to work with you a little bit more as we get to the NFL level? I think from his Combine performance, that is the answer. It's much more of the latter, where teams are going to be much more excited to get their hands on this guy and really mold him as an all-around, do-it-all wide receiver. Max, I wonder, and we're doing a mock draft tomorrow, so make sure you guys don't miss that here, same time at 10 a.m., I wonder if we're going to get Omar Cooper Jr. in the back end of the first round. Like, right. I wonder if that conversation's going to start, because I feel like he's solidifying himself as that top 50 pick, and everybody's going to be comfortable with him as an early second-round pick. Everybody's going to be like, oh, he's going to be the fan favorite. He's going to be the mock draft favorite as an early second-round guy. Well, a lot of times when that's the case, you probably got to take him earlier, and there's probably going to be a team that's going to want to take him earlier. So thought it was a very good week for Omar Cooper Jr., a good weekend when it came to the testing drills. And I think that now he has put himself at least into those conversations for the back end of the first round.
I absolutely think he has as well. I think, up there with the guys like Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion, they're probably going to be late first-round picks too. I think Omar Cooper Jr. is probably going to be somewhere in that range. And who knows, Trev, if Jordan Tyson's medicals don't really go that well, Cooper could start jumping him on some boards from other teams too. So yeah, I thought it was like I said, it was check the box type of day for Omar Cooper. I thought he looked really good in the on-field drills too. I think the numbers overall for him were solid. He had a good day overall, but I thought he looked really smooth in the gauntlet drill and all that too. So I thought Omar Cooper Jr. good day overall. It's kind of wild that he was at times Indiana's number 3 receiver during their playoff run with Elijah Surratt, and then a guy next year, Trevor, you got to watch out for Charlie Becker. Who was
I'm already
unreal.
well aware.
Oh my God, dude.
Aware of him.
He is a freak. You want to talk about a freak? He is like 6'4", 6'5", and he can run, man. So excited to watch Charlie Becker next year. He'll definitely be a top 10 receiver for me going into the year next year. But yeah, it was kind of wild that he was the number 3 receiver for Indiana, but it'll probably be a first-round pick as well. It just kind of shows how much talent that Hoosiers team had, of course, winning the national title this past year. But yeah, I think it's a well-rounded wide receiver. I think that's how I would describe Omar Cooper Jr., and there are plenty of needs for those kind of guys in the NFL, so he could be a first-round pick.
Yeah, another guy who is sort of a player who I would say fans, scouts, teams liked, but they didn't. Not sure if they loved him. Who I also thought had a really great week was Jeremy Bernard, the wide receiver from Alabama.
Yes.
I thought both Omar Cooper Jr. and Jeremy Bernard were kind of both in that same conversation, the way that you talk about these guys. Now, I think Cooper Jr.'s stock's a little bit higher than Jeremy Bernard's, but Bernard had a great week as well. Showed up 54th percentile in height, 61st percentile in overall weight, 81st percentile in hand size for Jeremy Bernard, which anybody who watched Alabama this past year, he was their most reliable wide receiver. So having those big hands is not a shock at all. 4.48 40-yard dash, which I thought was a great number for Bernard, 53rd percentile, and a 1.52 10-yard split showing that quickness as well, 87th percentile. The jumps, he wasn't super explosive, 13th percentile in the vertical jump, 69th percentile in the broad, so obviously a little bit better there. But the 3-cone, Max, talking about quickness and agility, 6.71 3-cone, 87th percentile. And again, that's over 200 pounds. That was really impressive. That was the best short shuttle time or the best 3-cone time of any of the wide receivers, I believe. I'll double check that in a second, but I know it was up there, if not the number 1 score for any of those wide receivers. But I was really impressed with Bernard. And like I said, sort of the same conversation of Omar Cooper Jr. I think a lot of people went into this week saying like, I like him, but man, do I love him? And I wonder if there's going to be some people coming out of this week really loving Jeremy Bernard, and I'm wondering if he locked up a second-round type of selection with a weekend like the one that he had.
He feels like the type of guy, Trev, that's going to have like a 12-year career as a really good number 3 receiver for an NFL team, honestly. I just think Jeremy Bernard's just a solid player all around, and that 3-cone I was really, really happy with Jeremy Bernard as well. And you can see it on tape sometimes too, where I think he is at times a really good separator too at Alabama. So yeah, I'm a fan of Jeremy Bernard, man. I think he is firmly a day 2 pick in the NFL draft, and he could sneak into the second round now.
Yeah. Who's next for you?
How about, his older brother was an all-time athlete at quarterback. How about this guy, the younger brother, Bryce Lance from North Dakota State? Because obviously the younger brother of Trey Lance, who of course was the quarterback in North Dakota State, was the number 3 overall pick back in 2021. Well, Bryce Lance probably not go that high in the draft, but he will be taken somewhere probably on day 3 of the draft. 6'3", 204 pounds, a 4.34 in the 40-yard dash. That is 94th percentile, 41.5-inch vertical, 96th percentile, and 11-foot 1-inch broad jump as well, 95th percentile. Guy who had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons at North Dakota State, a 91 PFF grade over the last 2 years, is 5th in the FCS for all wide receivers. I could see this guy going in the fourth round of the draft, looking for a team that's looking for a big, rangy, deep threat wide receiver. It's kind of the role he played at North Dakota State with Cole Payton as his quarterback. He is a dangerous deep threat with that combination of his size at 6'3" and his speed, running a 4.34 in the 40-yard dash, and great explosive numbers too in the vertical jump and the broad jump.
Yeah, I wonder if this is just kind of like another Christian Watson, right? I mean, like same pipeline right there. You kind of see the players win very similarly, really athletic guys, winning vertical deep down the field. For Lance, it's always tough to do this because Lance plays at North Dakota State, passed up, from what I read, like a 7-figure NIL deal to stay at North Dakota State, just because he wanted to stay for the legacy, the program, obviously with his brother being there and going there as well. And you watch Lance, and like I watch any game that I want of him, and I go, yeah, okay, you're clearly just way better than all of these kids.
Yeah.
And sure, I see him separating incredibly well and winning down the field vertically and yards after catch and looking big with his size and all that kind of stuff. But it's hard because I have to say to myself, how many of these players that he's going up against, how many of them are actually NFL caliber when it comes to their speed, their size, their strength, like all of that stuff. So Lance looked phenomenal at North Dakota State over the last couple of years, specifically this past year. But it's always tough to go, okay, but how athletic are you? This is where the All-Star Bowls, the Combine, all of that good stuff is really, really important for players like this, because you want to see them against the competition level that is much closer to what they're going to be facing every single week in the pros. And so for him to be 95th percentile 40-yard dash, 96th percentile in 10-yard split, 97th percentile vertical jump, 95th percentile broad jump. That just shows you like, okay, I'm not just a better athlete that's blowing my competition out of the water at that lower level. I am a legit standout vertical threat outside type of a wide receiver that can continue to win in the NFL. So Lance, I think we get the word riser wrong a lot when it comes to the evaluation of who these guys are and who's moving up the boards and all that kinds of stuff. Lance is a riser.
Yes.
Lance is absolutely a riser, in my opinion, because he checked the boxes that you wanted him to check even better than I think a lot of people who were maybe even his biggest fans thought that he would. So Lance, big time week for him, and his stock is definitely up. I think he'll be a top 100 pick.
Yeah, I think I could see him going in the third round of the draft too. And yeah, selfishly, you mentioned before how he had some offers to go up to the Power 4 level. Selfishly, I wanted him to do that, just to see, like I said, to see him go up in competition level. But it is cool when you have those stories like him. I remember Skylar Bell was the other one, Trev, from UConn. There were reports out there that Michigan made him a massive NIL offer to come to play with Bryce Underwood last year. And he stayed at UConn too. So it is cool seeing those guys at smaller schools be like, nah, listen, man, this is the school that gave me a shot coming out of high school. This is the school I'm going to stick with my entire collegiate career. It is cool seeing that, but selfishly as a college football analyst, I did kind of want to see Bryce Lance move up to the FBS level and see what he could do against the Power 4 guys. But still, great career for him at North Dakota State, and like his brother, he has a pretty good future probably in the NFL.
Yeah, Skylar Bell, you mentioned him. I thought he had a good weekend too. Smaller wide receiver, obviously in height and weight at 34th percentile in height, 26th percentile in weight, but 85th percentile hand size. He has 10-inch hands, which goes into how consistent he has been as a receiver over the last couple of years. But then a 4.4 flat 40-yard dash, a 1.53 10-yard split. That's 83rd and 82nd percentile there from him. And then the explosive scores were even better. 41-inch vertical jump, 95th percentile. 133-inch broad jump, that's 95th percentile for Skylar Bell. So really, really good weekend for him. The tape already rules, and this is another wide receiver that I think is going to be a top 100 pick. I think we're going to get a lot of these guys that maybe would have been fringe mid-round players, could have gone either way, but with a lot of these guys checking those boxes athletically, you feel pretty good about who they're going to be at the NFL level, especially when you watch their tape. I think Skylar Bell is one of those guys.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to be a third-round pick in the draft now after this kind of performance, and he had a great year with the Huskies this past year with 102 catches. That was second in the country, nearly 1,300 yards. That was third in the country as well, and fourth in the country with 13 touchdowns too. So big year for Skylar Bell and a big combine for Skylar Bell too. He's probably going to be a top 100 pick.
Deion Burks, I'll shout him out just because he's my boy. I have long thought that Burks has the athletic profile to be a difference-making slot wide receiver. And the reason why is because, okay, he's only 10th percentile in height and 8th percentile in overall weight. But you just look at this dude, look at his body composition, and then watch him play. He is rocked up, man. I mean, he is as athletic and as strong and as dense of 180 pounds as you are going to see. He's got some big hands to him as well, 56th percentile, especially when you compare that to his height. And then you look at the explosiveness scores as a former track guy, 4.3 flat, 99th percentile, 1.49 10-yard split, 96th percentile, 42.5-inch vert, 99th percentile, and then 131-inch broad jump, 91st percentile. I wish he would have done the on-field wide receiver drill, like the running the routes kind of a thing. I wish we would have seen him do that, but Max, I have felt like for the last couple of years now, it's been the quarterback play and the overall offensive emphasis at Oklahoma that has held Deion Burks back from standing out much more as a receiver. When you don't produce in college, it's hard to think that you're going to produce at the NFL level, but there are sometimes context that is key for things like that. And I don't think that Deion Burks is going to be a top 100 pick just because of the lack of production that he's had, and he's a smaller player, but I think he's going to be a fourth rounder that really has a chance to make a difference as a different style slot receiver. Again, a lot of times when you think about slot receivers, you think of these smaller guys, these quicker guys. And Deion Burks is that. He's explosive, but he's also dense. He's also got great body control. He's got great core strength, yards after catch, yards after contact. I just like Deion Burks a lot, man. I think that he could really surprise some people if he makes a team and has the opportunity to start as a slot wide receiver.
Well, Trev, right now, he actually is 101 on the consensus big board right now, so maybe he does sneak into that third round conversation.
Maybe I would take him in the third round. I'd take him in the third round. It doesn't feel like he has that kind of hype, but maybe he does after this.
And listen, I think our grades do a tremendous job capturing the context needed in football. But he had a 64 PFF grade, but I think there is context even needed with that PFF grade, because you mentioned it right there, Trev, that he dealt with subpar quarterback play in each of the last 2 years, whether it be Jackson Arnold last year, where it was a disaster for Oklahoma passing the ball last year. Even John Mateer this year, Trev, was up and down the entire season dealing with a hand injury too. So when you watch Deion Burks' tape, there are so many reps where he gets wide open because of how agile and how quick he is, but the pass is either inaccurate or John Mateer or Jackson Arnold completely miss him. So I think Deion Burks, his tape is better than his production would suggest. And I'm actually with you, Trev. I do think he's getting a little bit underrated right now. He's a guy that's going to have, I think, much better numbers in the NFL than he did in college.
We got to talk about two guys that were a little bit disappointing. Two guys. One of them has top 10 hype. The other one, fringe first round hype, who I don't think had the best weeks, and that was Carnell Tate and Malachi Fields. Before we get to that, our game plan of the week presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. I think the game plan of the week is whatever team drafts Ty Simpson, allowing him to continue to grow, allowing him to maybe not start right away, maybe not throw him to the wolves, but I think we saw from even a little bit of a glimpse of what he was able to do as a passer at the combine in the on-field drills, that there's something there with him. I think there's a starting quarterback at the NFL level within Ty Simpson, and I want that game plan to be whatever you could do to get the most out of that. And we'll see where he ends up getting selected as part of that game plan. Just like every team win starts with a great game plan, your future should as well. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing that tomorrow is covered. Whether you're just starting out, building your dynasty, or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. You can visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. All right, Carnell Tate. Let's talk about Tate's combine performance, because I think it was a little disappointing for some people. Now, 72nd percentile in height, 52nd percentile in weight, 27th percentile in hand size. I actually thought his hands were going to be bigger for how reliable he has been and how strong of hands that he has, especially at the catch point. 0% drop rate this past season and 85.7% contested catch percentage. But then you look at a guy who won so much vertically deep down the field, 4.53 40-yard dash. It's 35th percentile and just 21st percentile in the 10-yard split as well at a 1.61. Didn't do anything else when it came to the on-field testing. Max, what do you make of Carnell Tate's performance here? Does it disrupt your projections of him potentially being a top 10 pick and maybe even wide receiver 1 in this class?
Yeah, it could. I think, the top 5 talk that we've heard for Carnell Tate is probably gone now, whereas the Titans and Giants, I think, would have been interested in his services. I don't think he's quite going to fall far as far as the number 26 overall pick as Brandon Beane. I don't know if you saw this, Trevor, but Brandon Beane was joking around on the set where he was like, when he ran the 40-yard dash and Brandon Beane was on set, the Bills general manager, if anyone doesn't know, the Bills GM was like, oh, yeah, pretty slow. He probably should fall pretty far in the draft. Like making a joke, he should fall to us.
Right,
I don't think he's going to fall that far, but I do think this is a little bit concerning for Carnell Tate. Now, I didn't think he was that fast to begin with, so I think 4.53 is around the range where I thought with him. But, he is a guy, Trev, that he's a great deep ball receiver, probably the best deep ball receiver, I think, in this draft. But he's also amazing in jump ball situations. You get a little bit worried, though, is he only a contested catch guy? Now, I don't think he is. I think he's more of a crafty route runner than that would suggest. But I think he wins with his craftiness as a route runner. I don't think he wins with his top-end speed. So I'm not completely lowering him a lot because of this 40 time or this 10-yard split time. But it certainly wasn't great for Carnell Tate to run a 4.53 and a 1.61 in the 10-yard split.
The way that I would say it is this. I don't think his weekend helped him at all.
Yeah.
But I really don't think it hurt him in the grand scheme of things because you got to remember, Jordan Tyson didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Jordan Tyson's not doing anything because he's still getting over his hamstring injury from this past season. I mean, that news alone and that alone of him not being able to do anything at the combine really does not help him out. And I think probably drops his stock from where we were currently projecting him to get drafted. And then Makai Lemon, where Makai Lemon looked really great in the on-field drills, he didn't do any athletic testing. So for Carnell Tate, this was really simply an opportunity for, like, if he ran a 4.39, if he ran a 4.4 flat, something like that, I think he could have really helped his case to be wide receiver 1 and the first wide receiver off the board because they'd have verified athletic testing numbers for him that they feel really good about. But with him running in the 4.5s, I agree with a lot of the people in the chat. I don't really care about that. I still think he's a really good wide receiver, but I also just don't think that it changes the conversation at all. With Tyson's injury history and with him not working out, I think he's probably firmly wide receiver 3 out of the big 3 that we talk about. But with Tate not really being able to separate himself with a good 40 time, I think it's still just a toss-up between him and Makai Lemon. I think it's a complete toss-up between who you'd rather have, who's going to be wide receiver off the one off the board. I don't know where any of those guys go at this point, but that's how I would view Tate's weekend, as it doesn't hurt him at all whatsoever. It was just a missed opportunity for him to really start to run away with, I am wide receiver 1 and I'm going to get picked the highest of this group in this upcoming draft class. So that's how I would talk about that with Tate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when you look at a guy, I think the number one thing with the combine is you don't want to count athletic gifts twice. And I think that goes for both ways, right? Whereas a guy like Jeremiah Love runs a 4.36, you don't want to be like, oh, wow, Jeremiah Love should be the number 2 overall pick now because of this or anything like that. But also, like, you want to be like, all right, that's what we thought we would see from him. Carnell Tate, a 4.53 is kind of what I thought I would see from him. So I don't want to punish him for running a 4.53 as much as maybe some other people do. I think it's really important at the combine to, like, know what you think of a guy's athletic gifts going into it, and then don't count it too much when he does better than you expect or worse than you expect. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, he was getting some love, especially after good Senior Bowl. Getting some love as a potential first-round pick, a top 50 type of a player, 96th percentile in height, 86th percentile in weight, only 15th percentile in hand size, which was interesting. He had 9-inch hands, but really good arm length above the 56th percentile, long wingspan, 86th percentile, but 4.61 40-yard dash, 11th percentile, and a 10-yard split of a 1.63. That was 13th percentile. Better in the explosive scores, 38-inch vertical jump, which is 75th percentile, and the broad jump of 124 inches was 60th percentile. Did he run the agilities? I actually think he did run the agilities. Ooh, sub 7. There we go. 6.98 in the 3-cone. That's 43rd percentile for the position, but when you account for how big he is, that's pretty impressive there. But the long speed, Max, like that's been the question mark for Malachi Fields when he was at Virginia, this past year when it was at Notre Dame. He's a great contested guy. He can play outside the numbers. He can get vertical for you, but a lot of times when he does, he's settling for those contested catch situations. So every now and then you see a rep where he really kind of opens it up and you go, all right, you created some vertical separation there. Do you actually have something more in the tank here? But unfortunately, he wasn't able to showcase that in the combine to answer or quiet a lot of those questions. So I don't really think we're going to be seeing him in the first round conversations anymore. I think he's much more of that like late second, third round type of a wide receiver. I think that's more of where his draft range is going to be.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And you mentioned before, he kind of the big question mark for me with his tape was his ability to separate against man coverage. If you actually look at it, he has a 44% open target rate against single coverage in his career. It's only 12th percentile for a wide receiver. So that was a big concern for him. If you look at the 4.61 and the 40-yard dash, that only accentuates that concern, honestly. So I think Malachi Fields is a guy, he's a bigger receiver. Yes, he's a really good contested catch guy, but you get a little bit worried about his ability to separate at the next level because he really couldn't do it much at the college level either, and he didn't really run a very diverse route tree either at the college level. So he just kind of feels to me like a bigger receiver who's going to be good in deep ball situations, the contested catch guy. I just don't know about his ability to separate at the next level.
Yes, real quick in the chat, somebody's thinking that we're dogging Jordan Tyson by talking about him as wide receiver 3 and dropping a little bit. I think Tyson's the most talented wide receiver in this class. Like I had him wide receiver 1 in December, and that was knowing that the injury concerns were there. But the lingering injuries, especially a soft tissue injury, man, that along with his total injury history, I just don't think the NFL is going to gravitate towards him, drafting him very high because some teams might view him as damaged goods. He's got the knee injury, he had the collarbone injury, he had the hamstring injury this past year. The hamstring injury is keeping him from showcasing his talents on the field, whether it's the athletic drills or the wide receiver drills. And so I just think that he's firmly going to be the third or fourth, honestly, like wide receiver taken in this class just because of the injury history. But make no mistake, I think he is the most talented one there. Anybody else that you want to shout out before we get out of here?
Yeah, how about your guy, Trev? Ted Hurst, I thought had a great day at the combine as well. Ted Hurst is really good. And kind of one that was a little bit surprising. Jacoby Lane ran a lot faster than I thought he would in the 40-yard dash as well. So that's another guy, Trevor. He looks a lot slower on tape. So, again, you don't want to count it too much when he runs that kind of 40-yard dash. But Jacoby Lane, I thought even the 10-yard split may be even more surprising than anything else for him. He ran, He ran a 4.47 in the 40 and a 1.58 in the 10-yard split. So I thought both those were really good numbers for Jacoby Lane. So he's a guy who probably will go somewhere on day 2 of the NFL draft. He struggles to separate, honestly, but I thought Jacoby Lane ran a lot faster in both the 10-yard split and the 40-yard dash than I would expect.
He was way more athletic than I expected him to be, which is great for him because if he performed kind of the way I thought he was going to as an athlete, I mean, we'd be talking about a 5th-round pick, but I think that we're talking about somebody who's got the chance to be drafted a little bit higher now because teams are saying, okay, all right, there's a little bit more athleticism there. We just got to work on the fundamentals of route running so you're not settling for contested catches nearly as much as you did at USC. Appreciate everybody watching all of our daily combine coverage that we've had here on the PFF show. We will be with you again tomorrow, same time, 10 a.m. But instead of recapping the offensive line, we will do that, but in the form of a new post-combine first-round mock draft. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it. For everybody behind the camera producing the shows, for Max Chadwick, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the PFF NFL show, and we will see you guys tomorrow.